Hi there, my name is Amanda, and this is going to be my Pan Those Eyeshadows update for the month of June. If this is the first Pan Those Eyeshadows video that you are seeing from me, I do have a playlist that I will link up above and down below so that you can catch up with my progress before jumping into this video. So let's just get started with the progress. I am going to go from the least amount of uses to the most amount of uses in each shadow. And the first palette that I want to talk about is my ABH Curly Bible palette, and the shade that I was working on was Mandala. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where I am today. So you'll be able to see in the close-up and hopefully from this distance that I did manage to hit pan in this eyeshadow this month. Now I only used it an additional 3 times this month, so I used it a total of 7 times before hitting pan in this shadow, and I'm starting to realize that I already kind of knew this before, but I am pretty heavy-handed with my eyeshadows, or I can be, and especially with my shimmer shades. I really like my shimmers to be very intense, so I think that is part of why this shadow did end up having a pan after only 7 uses. I'm going to try to be a little more mindful about how I am picking up shadow, or how much shadow I am picking up from now on. I'm excited to be able to have a pan in this palette and roll this shade out because it was getting a little more challenging for me to reach into this cooler toned shade. So I'm excited that I got to roll this shade out. The next palette that I want to talk about is my Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette, and the shade that I was working on was Karma. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where I am today. This is a kind of reflective palette, so you probably won't be able to see, but there is some progress in this shade. There's more of a dent going on in this shade now, and I did use it an additional 4 times this past month, so I did meet my goal of using it about 4 or 5 times over this past month, but you were probably able to see in the close-up that I did end up hitting pan in the shade next to it, which is Supernova, and I really liked these two paired together. That's how I used Karma most of the time, was paired with this shade. In my introduction Instagram post, I did say that if I hit pan within the palette that had a focus shade in it, so for example hitting pan in Supernova even though my focus shade was Karma, that I did have the ability to roll out the shade for something different, and this time I am going to do that. So because I hit pan in Supernova, even though it wasn't my focus shade, I did roll out the shade Karma this month for something new. So the shade Karma, I did use it previously 3 times the last month, and I used it 4 times this past month, so I did only use it a total of 7 times within this project. The next shade that I want to talk about comes from my Colourpop Yes Please palette, my rearranged palette. I didn't know the name of this shade, but I believe that it is this shade Louie that originally came from this palette, so that's how I'm going to refer to it from now on. So I introduced the shade Louie into the project last month, and I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where I am today. So I think you're able to see from this distance that there is a little dent going on. I think that's just where I focus the head of the brush when I dip it into the shade. I did use this shade 5 times this month. I didn't truly use this shade all 5 times with a full face of makeup. The purpose of using this shade was to figure out what color combinations I wanted to use with it, but I did find at least one way that I do like using it. So that is how I have been using it, and so far I'm enjoying it. It is still a little intense for me, but it's not something that I wouldn't normally create during, especially this time of year. Before I rearranged this palette, this was pretty much like my go-to palette during the summer, so I'm happy that it's in the project at this time of the year. And I also have a pretty good dip going on now in this red shade. You probably aren't able to tell too much, but I think it's gonna be hilarious for me, who said in my last video that red tones scare me. I think it's gonna be hilarious if I hit pan in this red shadow before I hit pan in this shimmer, which I kind of think is gonna happen. The next shade that I want to talk about comes from my original Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette, and the shade that I rolled in last month was the shade Hunts. So I will put a picture up over here of where I was before, and this is where I am today. So I will have a close-up picture, but I can tell that it has some disturbance in it. There is a formation of some little divots, but no dip yet. I did use this shade 6 times this past month, and I have been using it actually with the Louie shade from the Yes Please palette, which is one of the ways that I want to continue using it pretty much until I hit pan in that palette. But I've also been creating a very simple look. I followed a tutorial, I believe her name is Josie. I will link it down below or up in the cards of her tutorial, but it was very simple. She used Hunts in the crease, I believe Roxanne to deepen the crease, and then Creamsicle on the lid. And I think once I hit pan in my Yes Please palette, that will kind of be my go-to look with this palette. Overall, I'm just happy that I'm getting use out of this palette. I think this is now the oldest palette in my collection, and I think I got it in 2017, towards the end of 2017, so it's going on nearly 3 years old, so I'm happy to just be having progress and reaching into this palette more. The next shade that I want to talk about comes from my Too Faced Sweet Peach palette, and the shade that I have been working on is Cobbler. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. So I think you'll be able to tell in the close-up that there is a more significant dip in this shade, so I'm very excited about that. This is the shade that you were probably seeing mostly on my eyes. I do have a lighter shimmer shade on my lid that's very similar to the shade Luscious here. I have actually just enjoyed having this shade as kind of like my go-to easy neutral shade when I don't want to create something very warm or very cool. I just want to do something simple and neutral. So this has kind of been like my go-to for that. I did use this shadow 8 times this past month, and I did use it 7 times before that, so I have used it 15 times now. From the consensus of what I've heard other people say when they hit pan in these Too Faced palettes, it seems like it takes about 30 uses to hit pan, so I think I am pretty close to that halfway point. I'm okay with this being in the project a little bit longer just because I have been enjoying it so much. And then the last shade that I want to talk about is my boring gimme shade, but it is from my ABH Norvina palette, and the shade that I have been working on is Base. So I will put a picture up of where it was before, and this is where it is today. So in the close-up, you'll probably be able to tell that there's more disturbance in this shade, but really there's not a lot of progress. And that's because these cream white kind of shades for me, I really only use them to set my lid, and I use enough to just make sure that my eyeshadows are gliding across easier than if I did not set my lid, so I'm really not using very much product. I did use this shade 18 times this past month, and I did use it twice before I officially announced it was in the project. So in total, since that picture, I've used it 20 times. It's nice to just have this as my go-to cream color because I always set my lid before I do my eyeshadows. So it's nice to just have that one that I'm reaching into. Alright, so this past month I did hit pan in 2 eyeshadows, so my total pans in my collection went from 30 to 32, and my pan percentage went from 10.3% last month to 10.6% this month. Now my eyeshadow pan percentage did not jump as much as it could have if I did not bring another eyeshadow palette into my collection, which I'm going to talk about right now, but I had a gift card. This palette was on sale. I was kind of feeling the FOMO, so I did end up getting one new palette that I brought into my collection. So the palette that I am talking about is the Urban Decay Naked 2 palette. And I know this is not being sold on the Urban Decay website anymore. I believe this is being discontinued. So that's part of the FOMO that I was feeling when I saw this palette on sale, and I was able to use my gift card towards purchasing this, but I wasn't into makeup when the Naked palettes were coming out, so I kind of feel like I'm holding a little piece of history here. So I was really drawn to like these cool tone shades, and even though this isn't necessarily a color story that I am as gravitated towards right now, I think this will be so beautiful for not only just like cool tone looks, but I think for work looks. I think I could make this work very well. I am really happy to say that the shade that I rolled in for this next month is the shade Chopper here. I think I would have been super excited if I had Chopper or Half Baked rolled into the project right now, just because those are the shades that I've heard people say are their OG holy grails. So I'm really excited to try the shade out for myself. And then the last shade that is rolled into the project now, I need to give a little disclaimer. I did pick this shadow myself, and it is because I am doing a little revamp, at least for this round, of my Pan Those Eyeshadows project. So the shade that is in this project right now is this Colourpop Super Shock Shadow, and this is in the shade Truth. So I will have a picture up on the screen of what this looked like when I rolled it into the project. I have used it 3 times since I've rolled it in, and one of those times is today. I have been using this on top of the shade Cobbler from the Sweet Peach palette, so that's part of why I rolled this into the project. My single shades are a little older in my collection, and this shade in Truth is the one that feels like I have the least amount of time to use it before it goes bad and I have to throw it away. It is starting to dry out. I have never finished a Colourpop Super Shock Shadow, so I think it would be really exciting to finish this off. Depending on how this goes, I may decide to start trying to use up my single shades, just because I really don't reach for them that much. I am going to use this shade as kind of like the experimental shade to see if I want to start finishing up eyeshadows within this project. So now this is my new color story for the month of July. I can't believe we're already in July, but you're able to see, I feel like this is also a drastic change from last month, because really it's either these very warm shades or these neutral shades. Do I have goals for this next month? I would like to get some really good progress in this shade, just because I feel like I really don't have that much longer with it, and I have been using it before it was in the project a lot with the shade Cobbler, so it'd be really nice to just be able to keep working on these 2 shades in conjunction to get use out of them. And I have also been using these 2 in conjunction since my little experiment, so I'd also really like to just keep making progress on these shades. Things in my personal life have been kind of hectic, and I possibly could be moving. I feel like if I do end up moving, there is going to be a delay in posting this video, but I will still try my best to keep posting to my Instagram, which is at useitupmakeup. So I would really appreciate if you haven't gone and followed my Instagram that you do so, so that you can keep up with my progress. You'll also be able to see my makeup of the days like this, where I am using my focus shades along with some makeup reviews, makeup empties, just things related to using up your beauty products. Alright, so that is my progress for the month of June. I hope you will consider subscribing before you go, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!